go.
Hello. What should we say? 안녕하세요. 안녕하세요. Hi everyone. It's great to be here. I think first of all, I think we should send a big thanks to the organizer here. It's a great venue, great startups and great people here. So I think the topic for today is we're going to talk about the global. I think before we started, I think probably you guys, because you are great CEO and founders, probably you can just 1 minute, just introduce yourself, right? Okay, maybe you started.
Absolutely. So my name is Dinesh Bhatia. I'm the CEO of Trade Hero. It's a financial trading simulation app, very gamified, supposed to teach people how to trade. It's a learning and trading tip platform, and you can benefit from Trade Hero by actually mirroring your trades in real life as well. So real life utility and a game at the same time, hybrid. We just launched in Korea today on Android in Korean language. Very excited. We've been #1 on the finance app stores in 83 different countries and looking forward to success in Korea as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Soujanya?
Hi, good evening. My name is Soujanya. It's an honor and a pleasure to be back here. By the way, I was here last year as well. The company that I represent is a company called Cooliris. Have you guys heard about Cooliris, by the way? So we have a lot of work to do, as you can see, not too many hands were up. So we obviously have, I'm glad that we are here making a beginning. Cooliris has had a significant journey. We've started off in the desktop space. We've done the gallery app on Android. We've built a Cooliris application both for Android now and iOS as your media hub. And in about 30 days, we are launching a brand new application in the visual messaging space. So very excited to be here and part of the panel as well.
Okay. So Mike, maybe you can give a really quick.
Am I using this one or this one? Hello?
Yeah.
I'll hold both. Oh, you just heard me. I'm Mike, co-founder, co-CEO of Atlasian.
Right. Okay, I think this panel is quite interesting because Mike's from Sydney, and Soujanya I think is from San Francisco, we say, and you is from Singapore, and I'm from China. So we are China, Shanghai, but now we're sitting together while now in Korea. So I think obviously that imply global is really important right now. So I think my first question is very simple, very straightforward. Why the global you guys think is so important, and why you guys come here?
So for me, it's very simple. Singapore is an extremely small country. I think everyone knows that. If you were just to set your sights on Singapore, you wouldn't go very far, both in terms of distance, reach, penetration, any angle you look at. It's a great pilot country for launch, great infrastructure, very homogeneous, but absolutely no way that you can sustain any sort of a meaningful existence for any great or disruptive or wow idea that a lot of us may have in this room and some of us already have. So we use it as a launching pad. Again, you know, the app distribution model has changed tremendously with app stores and Google and Apple taking the lead very much in that, allowing people like us to build products, and if they're great products, allowing people to recognize that and take it forward. We just started an office in Shanghai, and from now on, as we move on in the global landscape, it's going to be very much market entry positions as well as maybe specialized functions. Very, very excited about it. But all the way just from Singapore, we managed to, you know, be #1 in very, very many countries, app stores, but focusing globally, but being just in one country. So it is possible.
Yeah, so basically, I can wrap up. So basically, the first reason because Singapore, because you're starting from Singapore, but Singapore market is not that big compared to like even Korea and China. So that's why you have to reach out to the global market, right?
Absolutely.
And the second, because you have something to do with the mobile, right? Because the mobile, I think, is you know, from very beginning, it's like born to be global. It's like app store, right?
Absolutely. Leaving aside localization such as language issues, mobile is something. It fit what we needed to do as well, which was trading, real-time information, alerts, you know, a call to actions, which was very much our priority when users use our app. So it was a perfect device, and I'm glad that, you know, audiences from all over the world sort of said yes, it was, and we were ranked very highly on the App Store. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Soujanya. I think you are like U.S. companies, but I think people wouldn't surprise, you know, because we see so many good startups or good companies from Silicon Valley. But I think maybe your views can represent lots of things. So why do you think global is so important now?
Sure. So I guess we are a company.
And US is a huge market already, but why you here?
It's an important question, by the way. So just for context, we are at Cooliris, we are 18 people, 1-8, and we have one person who fluctuates between Taiwan and Beijing, my colleague TNU, and we have one person for outreach in Malaysia. So everybody is in the United States. So the reason I think global is important is not just because the app ecosystem allows you to be global, but there are two fundamental points. One is your enterprise value. So every single country, there is a user acquisition cost and there is a lifetime value of the consumer, which changes based on the geography. And that has an impact on your enterprise value of who you are. Being in the app space, in the messaging space, and in the photo sharing, as well as media space, you cannot just control and say it's only for one geography, because your consumers, your users of your product, they are the ones who lead you to be global. So it's less of a decision of us, we want to be global or not. It's really the users who are leading the way. And from the economics angle, you have to understand that you will get a lot more credit as your startup if you really have a good diversified user base. And the last point, not to belabor on the point too much here, but being in different countries enables you to test out different price points. It lets you test out different even business models to a certain extent, because people say in Asia, well, we don't think of as Asia, every country has specific business models that can be tested out. So being global gives you phenomenal flexibility in terms of even testing out certain price points and features.
Okay, thanks. I think let's get back to because we're going to talk about like the difference between different market. What do you see in US? I'm pretty sure it's different. What do we see here or China? Let's back to that question later. So Mike, what's your take on that? Why global is so important now?
Well, we had a very similar equation to Singapore. Is that Australia is a very tiny market for any piece of software. So we almost never thought about selling software to Australia. It was not even an issue.
But it's bigger than Singapore, right?
Well, it's a little bigger. It's only 20 million people versus 5, but it's still tiny. So, you know, we knew we had to be global. I think one thing that changes is the economics of our business very much. So our price point is a lot lower because we're able to sell to a huge number of people at the same time. And so it really changed the economics of our business. But we also, you know, very much look for talent globally. I think it's not just about the customer side of the equation. There's a lot of very skillful people all over the place. And so we very much focus on, you know, getting talent from all around the world, having lots of centers that they can work in, et cetera.
Yeah, but I think it's your company actually started quite a while ago, like 10 years ago?
12 years.
Yeah, 12 years ago. But your company actually 2 years ago,
Year and a
right?
half.
A year and a half. Then I think it's kind of changed. 10 years ago, but 12 years ago when you started, were you thinking of a global market at that time? From the very beginning, right?
We were. And we didn't have app stores, we had the internet. But same thing, we put up a website and we said you can buy from anywhere, please, you know. We tried to target the whole world. If you look at the old school enterprise software models, they couldn't do that. You had to start a sales office and put some salespeople in and distribute CDs and that sort of thing, right, if you go back 15 years.
Yeah, I think at that time, probably the information is not that transparent, right? Different world. You know, how could you make it at the very beginning when you started like global business? What did you do? You started hiring people, you know, outside Sydney
We had the first 30 employees were all in Sydney, so it's a while down the track that we really hired people outside of Sydney. But certainly from a customer acquisition point of view, we didn't, do any marketing, for example, to target Sydney or target Australia. It was all, globally. And for us, different to the App Store or the equivalent, was really AdWords and websites and downloadable software. SaaS is a good, for the enterprise. SaaS enables you to run an application anywhere effectively. So all of those things have kind of gone to making us have customers in a lot of different countries now.
Okay, but yeah, let's back to the question I just mentioned. You see lots of, because your service right now is really worldwide service, right? So what do you see the difference? Like US, Sydney, now Asia. Is there anything in common or anything? What's the big difference from your point of view?
On the customer side?
From the market side, in general.
There's some huge. We have a challenge in that we really have one price point around the world, and so that's often a big challenge for us. What is cheap for an American company is maybe very expensive for an Indian company, for example, and we have to try to pick the best worldwide price point. If you're on the App Store, you can mitigate that somewhat, but it's still a bit of an issue. I think the individual regional consumption, the way enterprises like to consume software is quite different. So for example, in Germany, they very much like to consume through partners. In America and England, Sweden, they're very much about do it themselves. And then you have regions like Japan and Korea where partners are extremely important. Localization is extremely important. The local language is a lot stronger. In Sweden, for example, everyone uses our stuff in English. They don't use it in Sweden, but in Japan, it really wants to be in Japanese. So you have to treat each market individually.
I think beside the language, from a B2C perspective, you have to be very mindful of the kind of local networks or the local social media networks or contact points that online users are using. We just launched in China. It was more than just the language issue. In China, red is up, green is down if you're showing charts, for example. So that sort of customization was needed. Facebook doesn't work there. So you can't do any Facebook online marketing. You have to work and also the App Store market there is highly fragmented. It's not like Google Play, Amazon, and the iOS Store. You have, 10 stores of mention and 50 stores behind that you may have to work with Chinese Android app stores. You need to integrate your social sharing points with the Chinese social networks like WeChat, just as we are integrating potential KakaoTalk when, in the very near future for Korea. So you have to be mindful of a lot of things, login mechanisms, social sharing points, the way that you do marketing. You have to really enter the market with your eyes open, do some research, and hopefully you have someone local to help you understand the market better. It's different in every market.
Yeah, but in terms of like revenues, probably Mike, you can share more because you make lots of money out of that. So in terms of revenues, which part of the world is like easy money, or US, or Asia?
I don't think it's that easy. Certainly the propensity to pay and the consumption of technology per capita per enterprise is higher in the United States, but that also means there's a lot more competition there. So it's not quite as simple as looking at it in a pure dollars and cents perspective. It's interesting, we did very well early in Europe, for example. We had real strongholds in Sweden, Germany, the UK, and a lot of our competitors that were very American-centric never attempted to look at some of those geographies. And I think that really served us well, both at thinking globally, probably because we came from Australia, we thought about the world rather than America. But I think you can have a lot of opportunities. If you look at WhatsApp, for example, is a good example where American messaging market is incredibly complicated, incredibly, competitive. So they went to other places where they could win and established winning positions elsewhere in the world. So I'm not sure it's quite as simple as the dollars.
What I also noticed, besides revenue, is engagement numbers are different all over the world. For example, in Singapore, our average session count for our active user base for Singaporeans was once a day. And in Thailand, when we got the Thai market, it was 7 times a day. So these stats are very interesting. And I guess it tells you, like little clues placed in your path of the psychology of different countries and the way that they use the app and how they use the app and how they think. And these are very, very interesting to unravel and see how you can engage people more.
Yeah, I think Soujanya, you can add, because they're super expert, because you have millions of users all over the world, so please.
So I guess also, again, for context, we have users in over 100 countries around the world. I actually don't believe that the markets are as homogeneous as we all think it to be. Even within United States, where we say is US one market, it is not one market. We find significant differences between the user segments and user populations in San Francisco versus New York. What happens in Chicago versus Nebraska. There are significant, and luckily for all you entrepreneurs out here, there are enough tools for you to measure. There are enough tools for you to experiment, like really do some systematic A/B studies to really understand. So I guess my advice would be is to stay away from the overgeneralization of the markets to say, oh, this market does that. The truth is actually in much more finer, granular details than you would think it to be. And understanding of that is important because that will help you determine to which audience, to which community of users are you really trying to productize for. And you're not just taking data at a very high level and making decisions based off of that. So Asia, there is no such thing as Asia. Every country is unique. Within that country, you might actually find even further granularity. We find differences even within platforms. What happens on a phone versus on a tablet. It's a completely different behavior. Time of the day of the week, gender. All of these really form the ultimate data set for you to make decisions off of. So I think the question is not just about the geographies and the markets, but about the user patterns and user engagement, as Dinesh said.
Yeah, let's talk about the difficulties, right? So for example, I think you just mentioned that maybe if you go to China, you have to understand the Chinese kind of internet environment. So maybe I think in Soujanya or Mike, you can share, is there anything you did wrong, but something you want from China, but it didn't happen because you did some wrong decisions. Do you have any experience on that? I don't know. So maybe you can share some kind of failure experience you have.
Things we did wrong in different geographies, you mean?
In different geographies, yeah.
I mean, we certainly underestimated how difficult Japan would be, for example. So if you look, it's interesting. So if you look at worldwide software spend, Japan is the third biggest market. I think it's about 9% of global software spend is in Japan. And we were nowhere near that. And understanding the way the Japanese market wanted to buy our software, the way they wanted to deal with the bigger partners, the network that existed there to sell software, we got wrong for a couple of years, I would say. The last year and a half, we've been doing a lot better. And we've been persistent. It's helped us a lot.
So how did you fix that?
We've hired a lot more people in Japan that understood Japan, I think.
That's a good solution.
I mean, that's fundamentally what it comes down to, right? You need people who are going to tell you about what the different geography or what the different region is like. You need to go there, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the reasons I'm in Korea is to try to understand Korea a little better. It's a growing market for us, very much so. There's a lot of technology, a lot of potential customers for us in Korea. But I had never been to Korea, and if you don't understand it, meet people, make contacts and networks, in our business, in enterprise software, it's very hard to grow things remotely. You can't learn about a country from reading Wikipedia.
Soujanya, do you have anything to add?
So I'd like to share more of the positive side, actually, what worked for us, because we quickly realized in China especially that there is no way that we can just experiment in China. Either you're all in or you're not in. So the only way as an 18 people company for us was to really partner heavily. And we got some lucky breaks, or especially our people on the team did a phenomenal job of working, and in the end we ended up partnerships with Renren, with Baidu, with Tencent Weibo, Sina Weibo, which is very unusual for, again, a company based in Silicon Valley now being in China through the partnership. So the model for us there was less about oh, let's just go there and set up our offices and go, but rather saying, what can we do to leverage? And leverage comes from being able to do good partnerships. Clearly, there has to be a value proposition for these partners, and that's the proposition we brought for them outside of China, and what we got from them was an entry into the Chinese market. So remember that partnerships is a very, very key element and ingredient of success that I think startups should really leverage a lot.
Yeah, but for the partnership, you think it's, for example, the communication with like a Baidu you work with in China, is the easy process, is that easy for foreign companies talk to the like local big guys?
So we were the first startup outside of Baidu, not just in China or outside China, first startup or first company outside of Baidu to get access to their APIs.
Right.
The cycle was about a 4 to 6 week cycle. It was insanely efficient and easy to work with these giants because they really, really understood the velocity and the need for speed. So it's actually, people ask me this all the time, was it very hard, was it very difficult? I found actually difficulties in other markets working with some bigger companies, not at all in China.
But how about if you were like in Japan or Singapore, is the same thing? You work with local big guys? Is it always open?
We do try because we feel, okay, if the model has worked for them and for us, then why not try the same model? And it does not work in all the geographies, right? For sure, different mentalities, different mindsets, different perhaps incentives come into play. But our job is to keep trying. We did try in Russia, and Russia was also equally good. It took a little bit longer, but with Yandex, we came up with a phenomenal partnership, and it has worked well for them and for us.
Okay, that's good. Then talking about, because I have experience, because I know some like Chinese startups, when we go out, to try to conquer the global market, and I actually heard quite a few of them, they try to pretend they are not from China. I don't know if this happened to you, no, maybe to you, but it's because some people think like Chinese startups is like cheap, the product maybe is not that good. So for this Chinese guy, they say maybe we just try to print like US, then people can trust us. But I don't know if you ever suffer the same thing or no?
To start with, if I tried to pretend I wasn't from Singapore, it'd be very easy because everyone would believe me. I don't look Singaporean. I'm kidding. I never do that. I think Singapore is a great place, to start. It's it's always the people and the products. I mean, the people team is it's a very complicated product of where you've studied, what you've done, who you are, and the product is the product. It speaks for itself. Where you live, for me, I think, and even now for the world, becomes more and more irrelevant. Being able to communicate what the product does, being able to show scalability on what you have done in the past with very little cash and what you could do with a lot more cash, those are the fundamentals, that I believe in, rather than where I would come from, I guess.
Mike?
We never, we've never hid the fact that we were Australian. But we made some very conscious choices that we wanted to seem global. So for example, in the early days, we got a .com address rather than a .com.au address, right? We could have gotten an Australian web address, and we chose to have a .com address. We have a US phone number. Even before we had an office there, we had a US phone number that just routed back to Australia and often rang at 3 a.m. in the morning. But, we wanted to make it easy for the customers to deal with us. But we've never sort of hidden the fact of where we came from. It was never, there's a subtle line in between those two, I think. Make people feel comfortable, but don't try to hide where you come from.
Yeah, I think this more focused on the startup because there are loads of startups here. I also heard the quite a few Korean startups, actually they want to enter the global market as well. So I think probably we can share some like advice, or thoughts about that. For example, I hear, so if you want to go to global market, so find the partner is very important. Then is that necessary to like set up office or a guy or full-time guy working for you? Is that very important for the market and then for the product?
I guess it depends on what you want to do in that country. For us, it was not just market entry, but we wanted to centralize our global development for cost reasons and for other reasons in one place. So we decided to set up an office in China. China, it's the largest homogeneous penetrated smartphone market anyway in the world as of this year. So for those reasons, we wanted to pay a lot more localized attention to that country. So those were some of the reasons. I don't think it's always necessary to do that. We had some surprises in countries that we never thought, that were never even at the top of our mind share, that we had a lot of success in. And now from afar, we support that. It just depends, you know. And I guess on top of everyone's mind share here is always mostly, if it's not your home country, it's China and the US. So sometimes it's just what you're thinking about.
Yeah, Soujanya.
So for us, by the way, we've not established offices anywhere around the world. Yet we have
You have in Asia, you have one in Singapore, right?
So we have one person in Malaysia, and she takes care of all our press. She used to be a TV news anchor, and we found that it was easy for her to get access to all the press people. And in China and Taiwan, we have one gentleman, the TNU, my colleague, who takes care of it. The things that we did rely on are two. One is we really focused a lot on hiring interns. With an 18-people company, we have 11 different passports as a team. So we are international, you know, just even within, as we are based in San Francisco. And then on top of that, we have a very strong internship program for people and students and non-students from around the world. And that, again, is a significant asset that you as a startup should be able to leverage to really gain insights into the market. And number two is every single email for customer support that comes in, I read it, my co-founder, who's a CTO, he reads it, and the guy who responds to it, Adam, is a phenomenal guy who will make sure in 24 hours you're responded to. So we are constantly listening because users, as a consumer-facing startup, are always telling you many things. You just have to do the job of listening. So I don't particularly subscribe to the theory that you have to have an office. Does it help to have friends around different geographies and all? Absolutely. Here we have Hazel here in the audience. You know, she gives us tremendous feedback about the product. But I don't think you need a formal setup in every geography.
Agree. And sorry, Mike, just a further question. I think it's interesting. Like, for example, when you come to China, probably when you are nothing in China because nobody know you, how can you pitch Baidu or some like big guys in local market? Because you are almost nothing at that time, right? How did you reach them? I think because I heard there are many Korean companies, they want to enter Chinese market. They know Baidu is strong, they know Tencent is strong, but for a startup, they're low way because maybe the big guys never listen to them. You know, do you have any experience you can share, like how to pitch the big guys?
So why do you say there is no way? There is absolutely a way.
But how did you do that?
So I think it depends on each startup, right? It depends upon their product. If the product has a need, and again, being in the app economy, with Android and iOS, it's easy to be available. So distribution actually is not your problem in any of these countries. It's the promotion of your application and getting the app to have being talked about so it grows virally. That's where your problem lies. But that's not a country problem, that's your product problem. And so I think the key is getting the catalyst started. So talking, being at events like these, I think beLAUNCH does a phenomenal job of making sure that here I am talking to you, the panelists, but also to the users and the media. These are all the ways of how you seed in the market, but ultimately the product has to carry itself.
Okay, Mike.
I was going to say, so I'm a venture partner in the, I think the best Australian venture capital firm, and spend a lot of time with startups and have invested in a whole lot of small startups personally as well. And one of the things I always see them ask is, do I need an office in Silicon Valley? I don't know if it's the same in Korea or in Japan, in China, sorry, but in Australia they're very concerned, do I need to have an office in Silicon Valley? They either want to move the whole company there, or they need to put someone there, they have an office there. And what I usually tell them is I think they need to understand Silicon Valley, they need to understand the American market, but that needs spending some time there, but they don't have to open an office. So your question about opening an office, I always tell them, I don't think you need an office, but if you haven't spent time in the Valley and understand the capital raising flows, the network effects, all that sort of thing, then you should definitely go there and try to understand that if you're a startup. but you don't necessarily need to have people on the ground there. Because it is so instrumental in the whole technology economy, I think it's important to understand how it ticks and how it works.
Yeah. Then I think that probably also second most important question for a startup is, how they can deal with the local competitors, right? I'm pretty sure all you guys, you have local, even copies, in different market. How you do it? They are like local guys. What did you do?
So not yet, but if you launch in
I'm pretty
China,
sure well.
anticipate that very, very quickly.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing is have a packed product pipeline. Be very, very confident and just innovate, innovate, innovate. There's no point looking at the back. You can have a goalkeeper mentality, maybe file for some patents if you've got truly innovative software. But that's always like a rear guard defense if you've got truly innovative or inventive processes. But focus more towards the front. Build a fantastic pipeline, delight your customers, and always keep building and innovating, so that in time, people will know, which is the super built car and which is the copy clone that is always 7 steps behind and a lot more clunky, and that becomes part of their mind share. Also, when you build a global product, it's difficult for countries, if it is meant to be truly global, like ours is with user-generated content from different countries, it is difficult for someone to come from a very localized setting like one country and offer a localized product, because then they don't reap the advantages of the globalization benefits in that product. But it could be different for products that lend themselves more for each country.
Thanks.
Any tips?
No, I guess for us, by the way, it's really similar. I think it comes down to ultimately execution. I know this is a cliche to say execution is what sort of wins the race, but it's really, really true. Competition is given. Whether you are local, global, doesn't matter. The guys next door, it is guaranteed that if you are in a hot space, somebody is going to try to come in and try to have a different take on this. In the app economy, again, you can do so many things. You can even have names that can be similar and still go at it. There's so many Flappy Bird, clones that came out. So the idea is, I think you create substantial amount of a technology stack, which is going to be a hard barrier to cross. But then after that, you just have a very efficient release cycle. So by the time somebody is already catching up with you, you are always going to be ahead of them. And I think that's the only way. This is a cat and mouse game in the end.
Yeah, move fast.
You have to move fast.
Yeah, Mike, to have.
I think from our perspective, I always tell any startup I'm advising that they should understand their customer better than the competitor. Because it's very easy to copy stuff, to copy the outside of the box. It's very hard to understand all the decisions that made into making that box in the first place. And if you are closer to the customer and understand what they really want and need, then you will always build a better product. And as long as you stay closer to them than the competitors are, I think you'll stay ahead. You need velocity and scale and speed, but it's very hard to copy something and understand all the decisions that went into it if you're not close enough to make them yourself.
Yeah, agree. I think actually we're getting run out of time, but probably we should just throw the mic to the audience. Maybe 1 or 2 questions, right? I don't know. If anyone here, you have questions, please just raise your hand. Okay, there's one. Anyone, could you pass the mic? Yeah, we only take one question. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
It's going to be in Korean?
네, Korean.
Oh. Yeah.
네, 마지막으로 말씀해 주실 때 결국 고객이 중요하다고 가장
Sorry,
강조해
it's not
주셨는데요.
Penang yet.
각 기업별로 고객 네.
Okay, please.
마지막에 결국 고객이 가장 중요하다고 강조해 주셨는데요. 그럼 각 기업별로 고객을 관찰하는 방법론이나 구체적인 방법을 가지고 있으시면은 그거를 말씀해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Okay. So it's I think last comments made by. So the question goes to Mike, right? Right, I think the question is you talk about the customers. The local customers, do you have any special, specific methodologies to analyze the local customers?
Methodologies to analyze local customers?
Yeah. Do you have any special, what's the way or approach to analyze the local customers?
I mean, we use a lot of data analysis techniques. So, obviously we analyze all of the feature usage and analytics from that point of view. And we do try to break it up geographically, but for a lot of our stuff, there's not a huge amount of difference in most of the services. We get a huge amount of feedback from support, from customers asking for features, all of that sort of thing. And the guys who manage that do try to gather it up into clusters as I suppose a methodology. And occasionally you'll notice a cluster that's very regional specific. So we do that. But other than the data analytics, whether it's your web traffic or your product logs or error logs, I wouldn't say we have too many specific methodologies. We just try to talk to them as much as we can. And I guess, well, the other way around, we try to listen to them as much as we can rather than do the talking.
Okay, I think we have to. Okay, there's a lady. I don't know if we should take. We should give. Yeah, we should be nice to the ladies. So you're going to be English or Korean? English. Okay.
Hello, I have a question to Mike. I came from Australia and I arrived in here today morning. And you guys just moved to UK, right? For the better condition and better environment for startup company. So do you think is there any certain difference between the Korea and Australia as a point of view startup ecosystem or environment or something?
Well, I can't say I'm massively familiar with the Korean startup ecosystem beyond the big brand names that are global. From what I've at least learned today, it's very similar, right? You have a lot of small companies at the sort of seed funding level that are trying to work out how to walk up the chain, and you have a handful of larger companies that are trying to grow onto the global stage. I think that part's very similar between the two. We're also, we share the distance from the US. Right? I hear a lot of the same questions today that I hear in Sydney and in New Zealand is, how do I get to the valley? What does it mean to be in the US? All this sort of valley centricity in the technology industry, I think is very similar. In Australia, maybe it's helpful, but we try to build as many bridges to Silicon Valley as possible, send people over there and get them back as an industry, rather than trying to beat them. I don't think we're going to beat them. It's not going to happen. But we want to have as much pathways back and forth. We have a very strong network of Australian entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley. So it's almost like if you get off the plane, you will find an Australian who will connect you into this network of people that try to help you succeed when you get over there. I don't know if there's a similar sort of Korean network in the Valley, but it's very helpful. It was very helpful for us 8 years ago, and it's still very, very useful now, I think, for new startups that get there. So I bet there's a lot of Koreans in Silicon Valley, so they're probably the people to talk to.
Okay, I think we have to wrap up. So I think, global is the trend. We cannot avoid, but you have to make move. But if you want to be successful, you have to move fast in local market. Okay, and especially if you want to understand Chinese market, please read technode.com. Okay, sorry. Okay, so thank you guys, and let's give a round of applause to the outstanding speakers here. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
sharing.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.